Pseudo Legendaries are some of the coolest Pokemon in the franchise. Pokemon that are deemed to be Pseudo Legendaries, which is a fan term, are Pokemon with high base stat totals, all these flashy traits, whether it be their typings, their abilities, their visual designs, but they aren't technically legendaries, but they almost seem like they should be. They have the stats, they have the... It feels like there's more effort and care put into this Pokemon thriving and being good and actually functioning in this way. A Pseudo Legendary is epic. And I'm going to rank all the Pseudo Legendaries today in this video, if you'll allow it. And I'd like to preface this whole video with saying that even the ones that are on the lower end of this list are still pretty cool in the scheme of the entire Pokédex. I mean, these tend to be the cooler Pokemon. Even the bottom 3 or so, I think, are some of the cooler Pokemon in history. But, you know, that's the nature of these lists, isn't it? There has to be a loser and a winner. I have Goodra Hisui on the screen, who I won't be ranking because we haven't gotten to use it yet. We haven't seen it in action. And this list, by the way, is going to be a subjective list, not a competitive viability list. This is going to be based on my thoughts, factors such as the Pokemon's visual design, how they play, their qualities. Are they well designed? Are they fun? Do I enjoy facing them? Do I enjoy their presence in the metagame? Things like that are going to be factored in to my decisions. And I hope you agree with all of my opinions and you consider them to be fact. Because that's just how it goes. Before we get into it, I would like to let everybody know that a dangerous situation is taking place. Future form of Sinistea, Iron Mugulis, has actually made its way into Minecraft. I don't know how it's happened, probably some sort of computer hack. But it's more important than ever to like this video and subscribe to stop this from happening. What's next? Iron Mugulis in Roblox, Iron Mugulis in Fortnite. We can't keep letting this happen, and we have to nip it in the bud right now. You all got to like and subscribe, or it's going to get out of control. Okay. At the bottom of the list, speaking of Goodra, is in fact Goodra. Unfortunately. Unfortunately for Goodra fans, I'm sorry. Of all the Pseudo Legendaries, this one I feel like is the weakest in many areas. Not only competitively, but also in terms of sort of having an identity and functioning properly. It's kind of like it looks good on the surface, right? It's Mono Dragon, pretty good defensive type. You got those valuable resists. You got a Stab Draco Meteor. And I mean, look at this special coverage, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam. You got like everything you could ever want. You even have a good like Earthquake. You got everything really. You got a lot of stuff. You even have Body Press, that's something. You got, I mean, look at these options. It's crazy. But, this Pokemon sort of lacks, I wouldn't say it lacks an identity, I guess, but it struggles to thrive in any particular area. It's sort of trying to be a special wall with its HP and special defense, or some kind of bulky attacker, but it just doesn't quite work in that department. Other stuff outclasses it. Generally, it's difficult for its bulk doesn't really allow it to get these moves off and pose much of a threat generally. It's easy to stop it. It's not going to really make a lot of progress. Its abilities aren't very good either. I mean, Sap Sip is useful. Hydration, maybe. Not quite. It's a bit difficult to make use of Hydration. And Gooey is okay, but yeah, Goodra, it can't really function as like a special wall or a attacker. I don't love its visual design. It's kind of plain looking. It's like a gooey dragon. I don't know. I guess it's pretty original. It's pretty cool. But I would say that it's definitely the weakest of the Pseudo Legendaries. Unfortunately for Goodra fans, I'm sorry to say. Now, I almost hesitate to say my number 2 because I'm probably gonna get attacked for this. People are gonna be rioting in the streets as soon as I reveal the Pokemon. But please hear me out, okay? Up next is Dragonite. Yes, Dragonite. The one of the most iconic Pokemon in history. The original Pseudo Legendary. A fan favorite. Is my second worst Pseudo Legendary on my list. Jimothy, what's wrong with you? How could you do this? Okay, let me explain it. Dragonite, I feel, is annoying. Frankly. I feel as if Dragonite represents either brain-dead hyper-offense strategies or some kind of stupid set like this one. You got multi-scale, sub-roost, dragon dance, or was it sub-roost thunder wave dragon tail? You ever see this set? These are the two kinds of Dragonite sets that exist. Some crap like this, or, you know, dragon dance, multi-scale, sweep your whole team, which is fine, but I don't like the... I guess I don't like that multi-scale gives you a free turn to set up. Previously, you know, rocks kind of kept this guy in check, and that was a whole thing, but then even then, I found it frustrating to fight, and it's like this looming presence you always have to consider. It makes you spend more mental energy in games. And then, you know, I play a lot of Gen 5 OU, and Dragonite in that gen kind of just... They're usually choice band, and they just jam Outrage and try to... Same with Gen 4 OU. That's most of Dragonites, right? They just jam Outrage. And then, you know, the Fairy type came out. You couldn't just jam Outrage anymore, so you had to do different stuff. But even then, Dragonite was still pretty good. It got Z-Move in Gen 7, which I sure love that. Nuke your guy. And then Boots came out, and then the one thing that kept Dragonite from being too crazy was no longer an issue for Dragonite. And obviously in Gen 9, it's kind of better than ever with Boots plus Terra. Of course, there's kind of counterplay to it. In, you know, Rotom Wash is pretty good. It comes in Will-O-Wisps. But then they could be sub or something. It's got there's like a million unaware guys if you feel like using those. There's Corviknight can come in, U-turn, and then you can probably respond to it with something. But then will it Terra? Won't it Terra? I sure love that. I feel like Dragonite represents this issue with Pokemon where they always do like... They make something broken, and then they make another broken thing to counter the broken thing. They always do this, where it's like, okay, let's give this guy multi-scale, but then Stealth Rock... Well, I guess Stealth Rock came out before multi-scale, but, you know, Stealth Rock kept multi-scale from being too nuts, but then they added Boots. So, okay, now Boots is preventing Dragonite from having any flaws. So let's add like all these unaware guys that are just ridiculous, that you Terra Fairy Skeledirge, and you simply Boost Sweepers cannot make any progress against Dondozo. It's like we made something broken, overcorrect in the other area, and then do it again. I don't know. I feel like Dragonite does not create nuanced gameplay that I enjoy. It's just, it's always kind of a little annoying fella that I don't enjoy playing against. Or with, frankly. So you can say what you will. It's an iconic design. It's a funny, goofy-looking dragon. I like its visual design. I kind of like it in the greater scheme of Pokemon, I guess, but I don't like playing it in most gens. Up next, I have Dragapult. Yes, I've put Dragapult above Dragonite. Imagine that. Is this pretty low on the list? But I do like Dragapult. I think Dragapult's one of the better modern Pokemon designs. This is what I want to see more of in Pokemon, you know? This is like a... Because it's got a great special attack move pool. But also it has only base 100 special attack. But because of it's got the stabs, it's got high speed. It's good to use on teams. It's reliable. It's got the utility of Infiltrator to break subs and screens and stuff. It's a reliable fella. It's got whatever coverage you need for whatever situation. You want Thunderbolt. That's what I like about all these pseudo legendaries is their, you know, coverage options. That generally makes a Pokemon cool if they have coverage options. Yeah, Dragonpult is not such an overwhelming force that it's like impossible to answer, but it's also just reliable enough to be common, and that's where the sweet spot you should find with competitively designed singles Pokemon. That I think Dragonpult has struck that pretty nicely. But on the other hand, I think that Dragonpult kind of represents something I dislike, which is the rise of the Ghost type since the removal of the move Pursuit. You know, they've done some balancing of the type charts over the years where they have removed certain resistances of types, added the Fairy type to effectively nerf Dragon, but then in doing so, Ghost has managed to be indirectly buffed by all these changes, and with the removal of Pursuit, it's become one of the best types in the game, both offensively and defensively. And they haven't really... It's weird. I almost feel like they should have just left the type chart as it was, but they've changed it over the years, and now we've got a new type chart. And I feel like new Ghost type is kind of annoying in this way, where it's got these two immunities. They usually have great move pools, Ghost types, and Shadow Ball is just kind of a spammable move. Normals aren't very common. Dark types are pretty common, but especially now with Terra, like a Terra Ghost Shadow Ball is a little bit difficult to switch into. And then like Dragonbolt here tends to have coverage to handle stuff that switches in against Shadow Ball too. Plus it has U-turn. Another thing that's annoying in Pokemon is the wide distribution of U-turn, which leads to like safe pivoting gameplay that's kind of annoying. That's something that I don't like about Dragon Ball, especially something so fast. U-turn can feel okay on some Pokemon, but on Dragapult, U-turn is so good. It's like really good. Especially that it hits pretty hard off this base attack. Yeah. So in some ways I like Dragapult, but Dragapult also represents like ghost move spamming and also pivoting, which is stuff I don't like. But I think I like it more than Dragonite. I would rather face a Dragapult than a Dragonite, and also use a I use Dragapult all the time. I face Dragapult all the time, and I don't view that as an issue. Really? Anyway. But still. Up next is Baxcalibur, who is the Gen 9 one, who I initially had pretty low because I thought the big thing that I didn't love about Baxcalibur was that it's very similar to Kyurem Black, you know, a Dragon Ice type physical wall breaker, but I think that Baxcalibur is like a cooler version of Kyurem Black. Kyurem Black, if you look at it, is kind of a mess of a Pokemon. It's like, what is this thing? Before Gen 8, I think it didn't have Dragon Dance. It didn't have Ice Physical Stab, which kind of made it cool because it didn't have these fundamental things that were so good, but also it's kind of weirdly broken. It has a base 170 attack. This Pokemon's just weird. It's also kind of an abomination looking at it. I much prefer the visual design of Baxcalibur. I don't think it's necessarily bad that they made a new type. They made a new Pokemon with this role, because Baxcalibur actually does kind of stand out in a few ways. For one, it has a much more interesting ability. This is actually one of the best ability designs in Gen 9. Immunity to burn, and raises attack when hit by fire. I really like this, even though the burn is kind of a fundamental way to handle physical attackers. It's maybe it makes this guy stand out. It gives it this sort of backup plan against burn that I enjoy. It also has access to Ice Shard and just normal stab moves. I mean, Kyurem Black has Icicle Spear, but Icicle Crash is a good move. You can run loaded dice on this with Icicle Spear if you like. You can run Choice Band or Dragon Dance. And I also think Glaive Rush is kind of a cool move design too. It's like the new Outrage, but it's a bit more like close combat with the fact that you take a big hit afterwards. This allows Baxcalibur to be like a good wall breaker because it lets you revenge kill it after it uses its big stab. I feel like Baxcalibur is a pretty nicely designed wall breaker that I enjoy using, and I don't mind playing against too much. I feel like it's manageable-ish. Because its typing kind of sucks. It doesn't have something like multi-scale that's kind of annoying to pin down. It's either going to be banned and I guess in a way it's kind of one-dimensional and simple, but I think it performs its role well, and I think it's cool. So Baxcalibur's cool. Up next I've got Garchomp, introduced in Gen 4. Funny Pokemon. Garchomp is... I like Garchomp in Gen 5 is my favorite gen for using Garchomp because there's quite a few different sets you can run on it. They always run Stealth Rock. Well, most of the time they run Stealth Rock actually. Sometimes you don't. But you can do like, you know, Swords Dance. Like this is kind of the standard set, something like this. Or you can run a mixed set with Life Orb, go Fire Blast, Draco Meteor, Earthquake, something like this. Or you can do a Rain team, you go Aqua Tail. Illegal now apparently. Rain team with Aqua Tail. For some water type damage, hit things with big water type damage. You can also do various different item choices on it. Focus Sash if you just want to guarantee rocks. Yachi to block an ice move. Or you can do like, I've even seen Salakberry. I've even seen Lumberry. You can also do a Choice Scarf, which is a good way to handle Volcarona because it outruns Volcarona, has higher base speed. Yeah, Garchomp. I mean, beautiful name, beautiful visual design. It has quite a wide pool of options. Decent amount of set variety, but also at the end of the day, it generally tends to just be, in most generations, you know, a Stealth Rock setter that has some offensive traits, which is like 90% of Garchomp sets are something like this, probably. Which is fun. Whoa, folks, how did I just get over here? That was... I mean, how did that just happen? Some things that can't be explained even by science. Anyway, yeah, Garchomp funny. Garchomp cool, but... You know who's cooler? Metagross, of course. Let's go to a gen where Metagross exists. Metagross is one of the top Pokemon in my favorite generation of competitive. Gen 3 OU. And it's also a pretty significant Pokemon in Gen 4. I think it's a bit cooler in Gen 3. I have sort of a love-hate relationship with Gen 3 Metagross because... in many ways, it's awesome, right? It's a bulky attacker. It is a, you know, alternate Tyranitar answer. Besides the usual Swampert. It can explode on things, and you can be a god gamer, explode on the Swampert switch-in, the Melodic switch-in, something like that, and take out their bulky water type or something important. You can Rock Slide as a Moltres comes in. You can run Mixed Metagross. Which, you know, this hits Gengar, this hits Skarmory. Or, whoa, wait a minute, Thunder Punch, Hidden Power Grass, what's going on? I'm hitting Skarmory and Swampert. Those guys usually wall Metagross, but now I'm defeating them. Metagross has all these options. It can even do Agility Metagross. Look at that, we can do Leftovers on it. You can forego Explosion, go Rock Slide instead to hit the flying types instead of having to explode on something like Zapdos. I mean, there's set variety, there's defensive value, it's got sand immunity, it's got clear body, you can't intim this guy. It's an offense enabler. It's a defensive backbone against rock types, various things. It takes a bit of skill to use as a resource. You can create explosion mine games. You can use it as an offensive win condition, or it's your point of defense against something like Aerodactyl. It creates these great gameplay situations, but also something I hate about it is Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash is kind of a idiotic move. It has a 20% chance to raise attack, and if you get this attack raise, all of a sudden you just defy logic and beat everything. It's pretty stupid sometimes. Metagross can win games or just run away with these situations where it has no business having an advantage. Something like a Skarmory should just be a counter to a Metagross clicking a Meteor Mash. It resists it, look at its defense stat. I mean, Metagross should stand no chance. But honestly, if a Metagross gets, especially if it has a Choice Band equipped, if a Metagross gets an attack raise, all of a sudden, now it's doing like 50% to Skarmory, if with a Choice Band. 50%. Nothing that resists Meteor Mash can come in anymore. Moltres is getting taken like 70. Swampert might be taken 50 plus. You know, it's really stupid where you're doing something very normal, going into a defensive switch, and suddenly they get the attack raise, and now you're losing. And it's not even your fault. What were you supposed to do? This is one of the stupidest forms of RNG in Gen 3. And probably one of the format's biggest flaws, in my opinion, is this situation where Metagross gets an attack raise and now you're kind of just screwed. It's weird because there's things people complain about in Gen 3 that aren't this, but this is like the stupidest thing in Gen 3, I think. This situation of Metagross getting attack raise. But still, all those other things do apply. All those other great qualities of Metagross. And it's set variety. And the nuanced situations it can create. But for the reason of Meteor Mash being a little bit degenerate, I've put it a bit lower. By the way, the Pizza Tower soundtrack goes pretty crazy. Up next is actually a Gen 7 Pokemon, if you can believe it. Comor. I think Comor is awesome. I'm just going to be honest. I think his design is fantastic. It's kind of... The name Comor is a little bit, like, mysterious. A little bit... You know? Epic. And it has... It's got an awesome dragon fighting typing. It has either bulletproof or soundproof. This I love. 2 different kind of immunities to certain moves. You could do soundproof sub belly drum. This is a set that I ran in Gen 7 OU sometimes with a Salackberry and Drain Punch. And then they try to hyper voice you through the sub, and then you're soundproof. Or they try to... I don't know, they're locked into like Blacephalon Shadow Ball, bulletproof moron. What did you think that I was born yesterday? Bulletproof time. Overcoat is even useful. You Spore immunity. That's epic. But of course the more popular set is Clangorous Soul. That didn't exist. Was it Clanging Scales and then you Z-move this one? I think that's it. And you Clangium Z or something? Commonium Z. That's the one. It's all coming back to me. This is, I mean, you know, I don't love Z moves, but signature Z moves are kind of cool also. Clangorous Soul. +1 all stats or something. It's a one-time use resource. A bit like a Power Herb Shell Smash, or what do you call it? Not White Herb Shell Smash, or a Power Herb Geomancy, something like that. A 1 per game resource that turns you into a monster, and then you go in with like close combat or whatever the hell you do. What's the set on this? Oh, you don't even use the... Oh, here it is. With Stealth Rock. I also used this guy a bit in Gen 8 when Clangorous Soul was actually redesigned into a regular move rather than a Z move proc on Clanging Scales. And it's like a unique design where you lose 33% of your health and get +1 to all stats. I feel like it's a fun thing. And then you get Throat Spray as an item you can use on this with A single use, if you use a sound move, it buffs your special attack, and you go special Comor. I like that you can go special or physical with it, and its move pool is pretty wide. In that regard, we've got Clanging Scales, which is a fun signature move. Much of my ranking of this guy is just because I think it's cool. There's something about it is cool to me, which is a very subjective thing to say, but I just have to give respect where it's due and say this is one of the better Pokemon designs in recent memory, in my opinion. I'm a Comor appreciator. I've put it above Metagross because Metagross honestly has that that trait of just mash attack raise being really annoying. Also mash inaccuracy being a little bit inconsistent on the other end of things. But Comor, I feel like, is just kind of a cool, flavorful, unique boost sweeper that has all these like really cool traits like bulletproof and soundproof. You know, all these, you know, good coverage options, unique typing. I think it's a well-designed Pokemon. I don't know. I didn't play Gen 8 much towards the end. I wonder, it's UBL. Wonder if it was like viable at all. Maybe, I'm sure there was some way to build around this guy. Like, what sets are in the thing? Defensive with body press. Oh, interesting. Defensive body press Comor. I mean, that works too. Yeah, you got to support move pool too. I've been talking mostly about the offensive sets, but who knew it got body press? Jim knew. I knew all about that. Of course. I'm always talking about how Comor gets body press. I'm always mentioning that. Up next is the classic Salamence, who I guess in Gen 3 this was Dragonite power creep. This is a strictly superior Dragonite in Gen 3, but regardless, I mean, I like its design. It's just a dragon, but you know, it's you know, give me a break here. It's a cool dragon. You can't go wrong with a cool dragon. And in Gen 3 OU, this is one of the best offensive Pokemon. And it really feels like this is like a Pokemon that rounds out the meta. This guy can act as a little bit of a check against fighting types with fighting resistance and intimidate. And it has multiple different ways you can use it. The most popular being mixed Metagross, actually, which this is kind of emblematic of why I love Gen 3, is that this offensive sweeper is more effective as a mixed attacker, even though that's not even its best trait. It's a little bit like Dragonpult in modern Gen. Even though Mensa's physical move pool is fine for Gen 3, and it's used that way, this is the most popular set because of its ability to just threaten a really wide amount of the metagame at once. You can hit Skarmory with Fire Blast, Blissey with Brick Break, Swampert with HP Grass, and Dragon Claw hits, you know, everything neutrally. Maybe a Flygon super effectively. The occasional Kingdra, if that ever comes up. There's also Hydro Pump, which has sort of been rising recently. Shoutouts to Fredazi and whoever else pioneered that. Probably someone besides Fredazi from probably M Dragon or something, if I had to guess. But Hydro Pump is cool because, you know, there's often a lead situation where Salamence versus Tyranitar turn 1. The Salamence clicks Brick Break, obviously, and then they go to Gengar. They're immune to Brick Break, they threaten Ice Move against you. But Hydro Pump is like a middle ground where it hits Tyranitar super effectively and it does a lot of chip damage to the Gengar. Another benefit of Hydro Pump, it hits the water types, Moltres and Charizard, really hard. And sorry, did I just call them water types? I meant fire types. And it hits Claydol, who is rising a lot. It really smacks Claydol. Yeah, Hydro Pump is a cool adaptation. You can even run Wish as the last move here, support your team a little bit while applying all this offensive pressure. I've even seen Refresh because often Skarm will tank the Fire Blast, Toxic you, and now your Salamence is crippled. They're going to Toxic Stall you, but if you have a Refresh, suddenly you can actually 1v1 Toxic Skarm and stick around longer and threaten all this coverage. Probably you have spikes up. Yeah, that's just... And I mean, that's just mixed Salamence we're talking about. There's also Dragon Dance Salamence, the classic, where... Even though this is such a simple set, it feels like a nuanced set in the way it plays in actual games, because there's a million things blocking this from sweeping in Gen 3 OU. Swampert easily walls you and one hits you with Ice Beam. Skarmory is always there, completely walling you, toxicking you, making spikes against you, destroying you. So you have to set up for DD Salamance's win condition like a lot. You have to take out their Skarmory, maybe with a Magneton or something, or just through chipping it down. You have to take down their Swampert. You also have to take down Blissey, because Blissey lives a +1 HP flying and Ice Beams you back and one hits you. So you have to chip all of these guys. Even Gengar can EV to live a +1 HP flying and kill back with Ice Punch. But what Salamence can actually do is run like a certain Spidef, so I don't remember it offhand, but it's like a bunch of Spidef to live Swampert Ice Beam and the Gengar Ice Punch if they're invested in bulk and therefore can't afford special attack. So then you can Dragon Dance twice against those guys, or just 2-hit them. So even though it just seems like a simple DD sweeper, in Gen 3 you can't just like... You know, it's not like a Volcarona Quiver Dance where you just click the boost and as soon as you get one boost, it's over. There's like 100 different things that stop at +1 Salamence. You have to use it at the right time. Maybe bluff that you're going to Dragon Dance and use that opportunity to chip down the Swampert that's coming in. There's also DD Brick Break is nice because you know who else lives a +1 Earthquake is Tyranitar. Tyranitar lives a +1 Earthquake, so you can go DD Brick Break and one-hit Tyranitar to catch them off guard. It also hits Blissey harder. They expect to live a +1 HP fly, but you Brick Break instead, do like 80-ish, probably kill them after a bit of Spikes chip or other chip, you know. I think DD Salamence is awesome, Mix Salamence is awesome. There's also like Wish Salamence, which is a support set that goes like this. This is kind of a flex slot. You can run Dragon Claw, Brick Break, whatever kind of little coverage option you want. Flamethrower is quite common because it has high PP and it hits Skarmory and Forretress and other such things, but you can really run various. And then you go full HP, full defense. And this is nice to support teams that have like bulky attackers like Hariyama, maybe a bulky Tyranitar, Metagross, fellas like that. You Wish support them. There's a lot of variety to Salamence in Gen 3. And I mostly like it in Gen 3. Ever since it got Stab Outrage, it kind of became a much more one-dimensional Pokemon. And especially when it got Moxie. In like Gen 5 OU, Salamence is unrecognizable from Gen 3 OU. Salamence in Gen 5 OU is just a Outrage machine, basically. With the occasional Dragon Dance set, usually Scarf or Band Outrage. And then after that, it kind of just falls off and isn't OU anymore. Isn't it like in Gen 6, whereas Salamence ranked UUBL? It's kind of in a limbo where it's not that good, right? And then a lot of people in my physical special split video comments said that Salamence was a bad example of a Pokemon that got less interesting after the split. But I think I stand by that. I think after the split... You know, in Gen 3, there were all these different Salamence sets. The way you used Salamence was more interesting. And then, after that, in Gen 4, it's Ubers. I don't even think it was a super relevant presence in Ubers. And if it was, it probably just clicked Outrage. And it has all these great options, like Fire Blast, all these coverage. But it becomes much more skewed towards physical Dragon-based sets after the physical special split. In Gen 3, the best set is a mixed attacker set. The most popular and consistent set, the most self-sufficient set is this. You know, you got Stab, Special Attack, Dragon Claw, I guess, but it's only 80 power. I do think Salamence was awesome in Gen 3 and became less interesting later on. Anyway, up next is number 2 on the list, Hydrogon. Whoa. Hydrogon. What's up with that? Why has Jim got Hydrogon so high? I feel like Hydrogon is just an awesome design. I love it visually. The color scheme, sort of the like 3-headed weird beast. I love its move pool. It has, You know, you could say Hydrogon is super similar to other special attacking dragons on the surface, right? But I actually think it has a lot that makes it stand out. You compare it to Latios, who is its biggest counterpart in like Gen 5 OU when it's introduced. You know, Latios is very similar. It also has Levitate. It has, you know, Draco Meteor. Doesn't have Fire Blast though, but it has Surf. You know, it's a special attacking dragon. But Hydrogon has wider coverage. It has Dark Stab. It has Nasty Plot. Oh no, it doesn't. Whoops. It gets Nasty Plot later. When does it get Nasty Plot? Was that in Gen 7? I might have been in Gen 8. My mistake. I think it was in Gen 8 it got Nasty Plot. I remember that. Okay. Never mind. It doesn't get Nasty Plot, but it has, you know, Dark Stab, Earth Power. That's awesome. Draco, which hits Heatran. Draco Meteor. And it has U-Turn, which Latios doesn't. And I was talking about Dragonpult, saying that some U-Turn users feel more fair than others. I thought Hydrogon having U-Turn isn't that crazy. It doesn't feel that broken. Because it's like, it's a speed tier below 100. Hydrogon is not actually that fast in the scheme of OU. So Hydrogon having U-Turn doesn't feel that annoying, whereas Dragapult has, you know, the highest speed in the entire game almost, with like 140, almost highest viable speed, besides like Regieleki whenever that comes out. Plus U-Turn. Hydrogon is much more reasonable speed-wise. And it has all these fun options, and it looks epic, and it's Dark Dragon, which is just an awesome type combo. Unfortunately, it has a little bit of a curse of not being very viable. Even in Gen 5, it's OU. It's really a fringe pick at best. It's like an alternate Latios with some admittedly pretty valuable traits like Earth Power to hit Heatran, and Dark Stab is nice. It hits the Psychics. U-Turn. Latios doesn't have U-Turn. Like, it sets itself apart quite a lot, but ultimately it's outclassed by Latios' sheer power and speed tier as well. 110 base speed. But I think they did a good job with the design of Hydrogon, but it just happened to not be that great and competitive. It's cool to see it OU in Gen 9. It actually rose up fairly recently to OU. Partially because it now has rocks, but it's also used as just an offensive, like Nasty Plot sub, sort of offensive sweeper. It just has a lot of really cool qualities. And I think it's like they tried to make something original with Hydrogon, I feel like. They tried to make it stand out, which I appreciate. And number 1 on the list is, of course, Tyranitar, ranked in UU, if you can believe it. In Gen 3, Tyranitar is the number 1 Pokemon in usage and viability, and I think it is the best number 1 Pokemon in any metagame. Specifically Gen 3 Tyranitar. Because post-Gen 3 Tyranitar becomes a very different Pokemon, but Tyranitar is kind of like an anchor point for the meta to center around, and it is reasonable to fight, fun to use. Something that turns people off from Gen 3 is actually Permanent Sand, because it's the only weather effect in OU. There's no other weather abilities. Like Drought and Drizzle are in Ubers only from Kyogre Groudon. So it's kind of like, it feels weird that Permanent Sand is just deleting leftovers and making leftovers like the most common item to cancel out sand. But actually, I think that Sandstream makes the meta weirdly center around Pokemon that are more... How do you put it? You know, you look at a Pokemon like... All the Pokemon that tend to be sand immune, that are used commonly, generally it's these guys. They don't really have reliable healing. So the trade-off for being sand immune tends to be either you don't have reliable healing, or you get trapped, or you have some other Achilles heel type thing. Like Swampert has no form of immediate healing except rest, which is obviously exploitable. Same with Flygon. I mean, everything has rest pretty much, but then you have there's Jirachi who has Wish, but Jirachi can get Dugtrio trapped. But then you look at something like Melodic, who has Recover. Everything that has Recover is weak to Sand. Like Celebi, Starmie, all these guys. These guys all have Recover, which is this really broken instant healing move. And they don't also have the benefit of Leftovers healing on top of that. So it punishes all these Pokemon with Recover. It's like having Recover means you are great at healing with an immediate move, but not passively. But these guys can heal passively, but they don't have Recover. It's sort of randomly worked out like that. I don't know if it's not really intentionally designed, but the presence of Sand makes it like Melodic would be such an annoying Pokemon if not for Sand. If Melodic had Recover and also Leftovers healing, same with Celebi, same with Starmie, honestly, a bulky Starmie, these Pokemon would be super frustrating, very difficult to break through, but because of Sand, removing the ability of... You really understand how strong Leftovers healing is when you play Gen 3. And that's just talking about Sandstream, rather than the Pokemon itself. The Pokemon has so much variety. So many different... Look at all these sets. This isn't even the tip of the damn iceberg for TAR sets. The standard is just, Dragon Dance, Lumberry, Sweeper set. This is, the default-ish set. But then every single team has some sort of response to this. This is not going to, insta-carry you or anything. It's not like the epitome of power. It's just sort of a good late-game cleaner you can set up for, similar to a Dragon Dance Salamence, where they're going to have the Swampert or Flygon or Dugtrio or something that answers this. And to win a game with this, you have to set up for it. And then you have, mixed Tyranitar, which is just, okay, let's have Fire Blast, Ice Beam, HP Grass, Brick Break, threaten everything at once. Skarmory, Blissey, Swampert, Flygon, / Zapdos, so you can go Rock Slide, hit Moltres, Zapdos, etc. Cloyster or something. This is an awesome set. It's kind of like a aggressive opener that threatens everything. You can make reads on a defensive switch. Then you have Pursuit Tar, who... Pursuit is special in Gen 3, which I like, because once Pursuit became physical, most Tyranitars started running Pursuit, and it really nerfed all Pursuit-weak Pokemon a lot. Even though I'm pro... I don't agree with deleting Pursuit from the game. I think that you could really notice the difference once Pursuit became physical. Ghost types or Psychic types were pretty much only viable if they could handle Tyranitar. After that, but I think that the thing about Special Pursuit is that it's not Tyranitar's primary stat, so you have to specifically invest into it to be able to... And because it's not its primary stat, Gengar, who is the main Ghost type, can EV to live one Pursuit, or, run, I don't know, Focus Punch to catch them on the way in, run Giga Drain to try and 1v1 them. There's a mind game of if are you going to Pursuit or Crunch the Gengar? Because if you Pursuit, they might be not enough power to kill it. They Giga Drain up. And then the next time they switch out, because now Pursuit won't kill, but you'll die to 2 Giga Drains. Gengar can handle Tyranitar. It's not a free situation where the Gengar's guaranteed trap. Gengar has all these tools to... If Gengar wants to go full, offensive and be really weak to Tyranitar, it can, and it can do really well in that regard, but there's a catch to that, which is that you die in one hit to Pursuit. But if you want to use Gengar to spin block reliably, you run the bulky set. It's like there's these decisions in the team builder, because Tyranitar... Pursuit Tyranitar is at this more reasonable power level than what it is, I think, in my opinion, after Gen 3. And then you have this bulky Dragon Dance set, which is interesting because it has just enough bulk to live a Dugtrio Earthquake, I think Swampert Hydro Pump, all these specific hits, and then it can Dragon Dance twice against those at the cost of some speed, whereas the fast Dragon Dance set is good because you run Jolly, which outruns Starmie after a Dragon Dance, and then you can threaten HP Bug, which is really nice because Starmie often can come in against you, outrun you after a dance, and Hydro Pump you if you're not this particular set. There's also Choice Band Tyranitar. Not even mentioned here is sub Tyranitar sets that do substitute Focus Punch. Something like this. Sub Punch, maybe Rock Slide, Earth, HP Bug, Physical, Focus Punch. But then you could go Crunch, Fire Blast. And you go Special Attack Investment. Minus like Spadef or something to get... So you don't minus your attack. And then this can threaten like the entire world almost if you set up for it. You can sub in the face of Blissey because you actually have... Or you run bulk, sorry, not speed. You can live a Blissey Seismic Toss behind a sub. Then you're threatening a Focus Punch. Maybe spikes are up. You're sort of threatening everything. You can hit Skarmory, who is a common switch into Tyranitar. You can crunch stuff. I mean, Swampert still handles this pretty well because it doesn't have HP Grass, but you can run HP Grass on this if you want. You can really do whatever the hell you want with Tyranitar. You can run Thunder to hit like Melodic Suicune. You can run Rock Slide instead of Focus Punch because that still hits Blissey hard enough. Plus it hits like Zapdos, who thinks it can wall you now maybe, if like Spadef Zapdos. All these things. Tyranitar is so... Like, I feel like Pokemon in a new generation are just... You just import the Smogon set and that's it. You can seriously customize your damn Tyranitar. There are these tried and true sets in the Smogon pre-thing, but every team in Gen 3 EU is rewarded for, like, tinkering and considering, like, what the hell should my Tyranitar run? Maybe I don't run HP Bug, I run Double Edge instead to hit Flygon harder than HP Bug can. Or do I run DD Focus Punch, DD Counter, EV specifically to live like frickin' Doug Earthquake and just counter them, or live Swampert Earthquake or Flygon Earthquake and counter them. Use like a Lumberry. DD Counter is a set. This isn't the EV spread. You have to calc it, but the Tyranitar is just... Like, I think that the Instant Sand... You guys always say how you hate Stall. Instant Sand is your best friend. It destroys all these lame Pokemon like Suicune, Celebi, or defensive Celebes. You know Suicune, the guy who just... Carmine Surf Rest Talk? This set? Sand destroys this. They can't Leftovers chip. Sand is your friend. Sand is helping you. You guys hate Stall? I got news for you. Stall in Gen 3 has a lot of hurdles to overcome. Defensive gameplay is not that powerful yet. The extent of defensive gameplay is like Blissey Natural Cure. That is like the extent of defensive power. Like you can't status this because it can switch out and cure it. Or like Recover, Soft Boiled. This is like the strongest defensive mechanic in the game, is just to heal. Okay, later gens we got Regen, Magic Guard, Magic Bounce, Unaware, all these mechanics. In Gen 3 it's just like... Not only are these more defensive Pokemon really punished by Sand, they're also quite limited in many ways. They're exploitable. They have an uphill battle in many ways. They're good, but they're not like safe. Go to the guy, click knockoff, and imagine Blissey had knockoff Stealth Rock. No. There's no free clicks here. Same with Tyranitar. You don't just win when you click D-Dance. You gotta set up for it. You gotta consider, what tar am I using on my team? A mixed tar does good damage early, sets up for my arrow in the back or something. Or do I run Crunch here to threaten Claydol a bit more? Or you know, hit Gengar. Do I make up my own Tyranitar? Here's a Tyranitar set I use. Pursuit, Crunch, Earthquake, Focus Punch. Because you want to hit, and then you do minus speed to maintain your attack stat, and then you creep up to 150 to hit Outrun Blissey. Because you can Focus Punch and Earthquake the Blissey. And you can Earthquake Jirachi, defensive Jirachi. And maybe I have like Magneton, so therefore I don't need Fire Blast to hit Skarmory. You know? Or I could... What if I want to run Thunder here for no reason? But there is a reason. You hit Melodic, who can come in pretty nicely against Pursuit-type. You can run HP Grass here to hit the Swampert. You can run Ice Beam here to hit the Flygon or the Salamence. I mean, I'm customizing my Tyranitar right now. I'm not even playing a game, folks. Tyranitar is so epic. It's so epic. This is great. I'm having fun. I'm not even making a team. I'm having fun. All right. I'll shush up about Gen 3 and how much I like it. We can end the video now, but I hope you enjoyed this rambling session from Jim. That was fun. Thank you for watching. I hope you don't hate my opinions too much. I hope you learned a bit about what I value in, Pokemon design here. Perhaps. So we all have our different opinions on these things. And like I said, even, the second worst Pokemon in this list, which was Dragonite, still has a lot of fun traits to it. These Pseudo Legendaries tend to be the cooler Pokemon available, so yeah. But hey, I'm Jim, I'm me, I have my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video. And I'll catch you later, everybody. Goodbye.